maybe living paycheck to paycheck is not the way to live my life. Maybe I want to be a successful business owner, and there's maybe some things I need to do differently, but I didn't know what they were, honestly.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach Podcast, helping appraisers increase their efficiency, quality, and make more money. Here's the guy who makes it his life's mission to create value for real estate appraisers nationwide. Your host and the Appraiser Coach, Dustin Harris.
I want to talk finances today. Before you turn off the podcast and, I don't know, switch over to Joe Rogan. A couple things I want to say. First of all, I promise to make this not boring as much as I can, okay? I promise to make this short, and I promise, okay, now listen closely, I promise, Scout's honor, that if you will listen and apply the things that I'm going to teach you today and next week. Now, obviously, I can't do this for you. That's why I said if you apply, but I promise you if you will apply these principles, you will become more profitable and your assets will rise. The other promise I can make you is that if you will listen closely to the sponsorships today, your life will be easier as an appraiser. For example, Data Master will save you, check this out, folks, 45 minutes on average per report. Every report you do, can you imagine cutting 45 minutes off of that report time? No, it's not just a marketing tool. I guarantee you will save at least 30 minutes, if not an hour. I just average it off to 45 minutes. Check them out. Go to datamasterusa.com. Again, it's datamasterusa.com. The other promise I'll make you is if you have not already made the switch to a la mode, if you will do so, you will see that your efficiencies will go up, your quality will go up, and the ability to be able to do more with less. Check them out by calling them. Pick up the phone, call them at 800-ALA-MODE, or you can pick up your computer and just dial in www.alamode.com. Finally, I promise you that if you will take a listen to what is being said on Working RE magazine, in other words, you read the articles that are being written there, you will learn more about your chosen profession and be able to position yourself for the future. Check them out by going to workingre.com. Again, it's workingre.com. Okay, folks, we're going to talk. I'm going to split this up into two different episodes. I thought about doing it all in one, but honestly, there's a lot of meat here. And though it's not going to be a long podcast, I promised you that up front, that I would make this short and sweet, and I will. Okay. Even if I did both of them together, it would probably be a normal-sized podcast, I'm guessing. There's just a lot to take in, okay? And so I decided to split it up over 2 weeks, mainly because the information, I just think if I just unloaded everything on you in one episode, it would just be a little overwhelming. So my goal here today is to teach you some practices, and yes, even some principles that have to do with running your business more efficiently and more like a business owner should. Okay, but I've decided to split these into two different episodes. Today we're going to be talking about what a balance sheet is and how to read one. And I know that seems like simple stuff to some of you, but honestly, a lot of you probably don't do this, and it's probably because you've never really been taught to go through a balance sheet and what it actually means. Now, a lot of the stuff I'm going to be talking about today, you already know, granted, okay? And I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about what a balance sheet is. Most of you can answer that right now. What I want to take you through is a practice that I go through every quarter with all of my businesses and my personal finances as well. And I'll tell you why in just a moment. And then next week, we're going to talk about a P&L, a profit and loss statement. Those are two essentials if you're going to run a business. Now, let me just back up for just a second and set the stage. You should know that I spent the first 12 years of my business basically doing what my mentor taught me to do. And my mentor is a great guy. My dad, love him to death. But he taught me how to be an appraiser, not necessarily how to be a business owner. And in order to run my business, you know the story. I basically looked around and saw what everybody else was doing, and I copied what they were doing. Well, guess what, folks? It's no secret that most appraisers are Pam in the E-Myth Revisited. Okay, if you've not read the book, read the book, all right? I'm going to give you another book recommendation, by the way, at the end of the podcast today, one that will help you with some of the things that I'm talking about today. So stay tuned. I know some of you have already switched over to Joe Rogan. That's okay. Those of you who are left remaining, trust me, you will be rewarded handsomely for staying today, because the things that you learn today, I think, will be very, very beneficial to your life. Okay. Where was I? Oh, I ran my business like everybody else, and I was Pam. I was all about pies. I was Pam, and I was getting by. In other words, I was a technician turned quote unquote business owner that stayed the technician. And I ran my business that way for a dozen plus years. In fact, I ran it that way for more than a dozen years. I say a dozen years because it took me that long to wake up to my awful situation and to start to say, maybe living paycheck to paycheck is not the way to live my life. Maybe I want to be a successful business owner, and there's maybe some things I need to do differently, but I didn't know what they were, honestly. I knew I needed to do something. I didn't know what that something was. And so I took several years away from TV, away from benign entertainment, if you will, and educated myself on successful people and how they ran their business. And one of the things I learned is that successful business owners know their finances. They know where every penny is spent. I'm not kidding. And that's not an exaggeration. That's not just a term I use. There's an individual that I knew that was a mentor to me who literally counted every penny. And he knew where every penny came from and where every penny was spent. Now, some of you might think that's a little anal. Some of you are thinking, well, geez, Dustin, I don't want to be successful if that's what it means. And I get it. I felt that way too. And I'll be honest with you, I don't count every penny, okay? But if you asked me where my assets were coming from and where my liabilities were, I could answer that pretty close almost any time. Because on a quarterly basis, I take time out of my business to work on my business. And part of that is knowing what my balance sheet looks like. Part of that is knowing what a P&L is and how to read it. And here's why it's important. Okay, it's not just about puffing your chest out and saying, gee, look, Ma, I'm a business owner. It's about making decisions that will make you more successful. It's about when opportunities come to you. You don't have to wonder whether or not you can do a certain thing. It then becomes whether or not you should do a certain thing. Let me give you an example on a much lower basis. Okay, somebody comes to you and says, I've got this car for sale, and I want to sell you this car. Okay, it's one thing to decide whether or not you should buy that car. It's a whole other decision, folks, to even know whether you could buy that car. What if you had no idea how much money you had in the bank? What if you had no idea how much money you had in your pocket and somebody offered to sell you something? I mean, let's forget a car for just a second. You're at the fair and somebody offers you a churro for $2, right? And you really want that churro. And you have no idea whether you have $2 in your pocket or not. How do you even make the decision whether or not to spend the money there? Folks, it's no different with your business. And it doesn't surprise me because I was there for so many years, but it might surprise you to have me tell you that most of the clients that I take on for one-on-one coaching have not looked at their balance sheet or their profit loss statement. And that's one of the things that we do together. Depending on what you came to me for what coaching, there is a process that I will go through on a regular basis with my coaching clients who are willing to be a little bit vulnerable, okay, a lot bit vulnerable, because they're willing to give me their profit loss statement and their balance sheet, okay? First of all, I walk them through how to get those and how to develop those. But then we sit down together and I'll walk through their finances with them and help them to be able to start learning how to fish. My goal in a session like that is not to give them the fish. It's not to fish for them and say, well, Joe, you need to do this, this, and this, and then you'll be profitable. No, my goal is to take them out to the lake, put the pole in their hand and say, let me show you how to cast. Let me show you where to cast. Let me show you how to reel it in. And let me show you what happens when you get a bite. Because my goal is not to hold their hand the rest of their life. My goal is to teach them how to fish, as the saying goes, so that they can do this on their own moving forward. And I can help you to do that. And I'm going to give you some tips today about those simple things. Okay. I want to pause here and remind you that we are sponsored by 3 great companies. Companies that I mentioned earlier in the podcast. First of all, we are sponsored by Alamode. Folks, I've been using Alamode software for over 20 years. That's over 2 decades from the very beginning. Now, I've used other software for various reasons over the years. Not that I've ever really looked hard at switching, but for various reasons, especially with my clients, I've used software out there, and it's good software. It really is. I stick with Alamode because it is the software that allows me to do the most that I possibly can. And to me, my business is everything. It's what brings me the money. It's what brings me the assets, as we're going to be talking about today. And therefore, I don't see Alamode as a liability. It's an asset to me because it brings more assets to me. Check them out by going to alamode.com or 800-ALAMODE. We're sponsored, of course, by DataMaster. DataMaster being the way that you can save 30 to 60 minutes per report. How? Well, here's how it works, folks. The information that you normally take from property records and put into the 1004, for example, every time you choose a comparable, you have to get that into your software somehow. That typically means you're looking at one screen and typing the data into another screen. But folks, all of that can be done for you at the touch of a button. No, it's not going to choose the comps for you. No, it's not going to guess what subject data you need. You tell it what to do, and it will do it at the punch of a button. Check them out. Go to datamasterusa.com. One more time, it's datamasterusa.com. Finally, we're sponsored by Working RE Magazine. About twice, maybe 3 times a week, I get an email from Working RE Magazine. Here's the process I go through, folks. I open up my inbox, and by the way, I am a freak when it comes to my inbox. I do not go to bed without a clean inbox. I just don't. Now, some things I'll snooze to the next day because I know I can't get to them today, but I do not go. In fact, I'm looking at my inbox right now, and these 3 words, no new mail, and there's a nice exclamation point at the end of that. I love seeing that. No new mail. It's done. Inbox is clean. Well, here's the thing. When Working RE Magazine sends me an email, and they do a couple times a week, I look at it. If I'm interested, I click on it. If I'm not, I archive it. That's it. It's easy. It takes me half a second. But here's the reward that I get. On a pretty regular basis, there's some pretty good articles coming from Working RE Magazine, and I can stay in the know on what's going on in the appraisal profession, the profession that I have chosen to make my money in. Check them out by going to workingre.com, and when you're there, it's really easy. Put your email address in there. Sign up for their free, FREE, email. You will be glad you did. Workingre.com, workingre.com. All right, welcome back to the program, folks. I appreciate you joining me today. We're talking about stuff that could be kind of boring, and I get that. I want to make it fun for you, okay? As fun as finances can be. By the way, I need to give a little bit of a caveat here. I feel it's important. I know it sounds silly when people say this. Well, of course you're not, Dustin. I get that. But I feel like it's important to say, okay? Because I'm dealing with a topic today that is pretty darn important. It's your finances, folks. And I don't want to step on any toes, and I don't want to give you advice that otherwise might hurt you in the long run. So I want to make it very, very clear, okay? What I'm sharing with you today is general information on what a balance sheet is. And then I'm going to talk to you about a practice that I go through on a quarterly basis. And I want to stress here that it's a practice that I go through. It's not necessarily the practice that you should go through. And I am not an accountant. I am not a CPA. I am not an attorney. I'm not even a financial advisor. Okay? I'm a guy with a microphone that calls himself the Appraiser Coach. So there you go. Take it for what it's worth. Hopefully the information that you receive today will be beneficial to you. I think it will be. But I would highly recommend that before you begin, just how they say, before you begin an exercise regimen, consult your doctor. Before you begin this practice that I'm talking about today, I would consult a CPA, an attorney, not an attorney, but at least an accountant, somebody who can help you to go through this process properly. And especially, and I can't stress this enough, especially if you're going to make financial decisions based on the information that I'm giving you today, please get the advice of somebody smarter than myself. Okay? All right. Let's talk about a balance sheet for just a second. It is the sheet that is defined by its name, right? A balance sheet is a sheet that will show you the balance of your finances. Okay? Unlike a profit loss statement, which we're going to talk about next week, a balance sheet is not an indication of how well your business is doing. Okay? And it certainly does not show you how well or poorly your business has done in the past, month, quarter, year, what have you. That's a profit loss statement. We'll get into that, like I say, next week. A balance sheet is simply, think of it this way, okay? An appraisal is a value as of an effective date, right? And we're very understanding as appraisers that could change tomorrow. I know it typically doesn't, right? Values don't typically and dramatically change day to day, but they could. There's a very big employer in my area. It's a DOE, a Department of Energy employer, okay, the site. And it employs a lot of people, right? If the site announced that it were shutting down tomorrow, every value that I put on an appraisal today would dramatically change overnight, 24 hours, right? That could happen. And we make it very clear that we're giving values as of a snapshot in time. Okay, we don't guarantee rather, that it's going to be something that you can rely on the next day or the next day or the next day. As of this date, this is the value of the home. And likewise, a balance sheet is simply a single time snapshot of your business. Think of it as a picture, okay? That we just snapped the picture. Here's what your business looks like right this second. That could change tomorrow. That could change next week. We hope it will change over the years to come. We hope that your assets will increase, right? So what does that mean? A balance sheet is simply this. In its most simple form, a balance sheet is simply assets on one side and liabilities on the other. Now, liabilities also include owner's equity, okay? That's why it balances on both sides, okay? Owner's equity, by the way, is what you own, okay? Outright, not creditors, what you own outright. Think of it this way. Assets equal liabilities plus owner's equity. Let me repeat that. If you're taking notes at home, this is a good thing to write down. Assets equal. Okay, assets are on the left side. Then you've got an equal sign. On the right side, you've got liabilities plus owner's equity. Okay, so assets are either owned by you or they're owned by a creditor. In other words, if you had to take out a loan in order to buy a company car or buy that business building that you do appraisals out of, or that fancy new computer you just couldn't afford to pay cash, you had to take out a loan, that would be owned by a creditor, not by you. Once you have that paid off, then you now own it. Okay? So in its simple form, just think of it this way. You got assets on one side, liabilities on the other, and they must equal. That's why they call it a balance sheet. Okay? So what, Dustin? Big deal. I mean, I know how to balance a checkbook, right? Well, great. If you know how to balance a checkbook, then you know how to read a balance sheet. It's no different. Now, we're talking about different things, but it's a very similar concept. If you understand how to balance a checkbook, and by the way, well, I won't get on my soapbox. There's so many millennials out there that have no clue what a checkbook even is or how to balance it. Anyway, I digress. If you understand how to balance a checkbook, then you can be a business owner, okay? and I can't stress this enough, folks. At the bare minimum, okay? Granted, you can go out there and appraise all the real estate you want to appraise, and you can be successful at doing it. But folks, if you're not on a regular basis, this is my opinion, okay? But it's my show. I can make my opinion known. Here we go. If you are not on a regular basis, minimum twice a year, but I would suggest more often than that. I know some people that do this monthly. I do it quarterly. At a minimum, if you are not reviewing your balance sheet and your P&L I hate to say it so bluntly, but you're not being a business owner, okay? And I know a lot of you want to be business owners. Let's start with the easy stuff. Let's start with balance sheets. All right. Let me talk to you just briefly about the practice that I go through. And it's very simple. There's no secret formula. In fact, I'm doing this all off the top of my head. I have 0 notes in front of me. I just want to share with you what I go through. Now, first of all, let me back up and remind you that this is not working in your business. Working in your business is going out in the field, making measurements, taking comp pictures, pulling comps, making adjustments. That's working in your business, right? It's dealing with that real estate agent that just won't leave you alone. That's working in your business. On a regular basis, you need to be working on your business, okay? Work on your business, not in your business. That means you shut everything off. I don't care how busy you are. You shut everything off and you work on your business. And part of that, for me, every quarter, every 3 months, is to review. And it doesn't take long, by the way. This is a couple of minutes. I probably spend 10 minutes max reviewing my balance sheet and my P&L. Okay, it's not a heavy thing. And by the way, I do that on purpose because if I made it a big deal, and I could spend a lot of time in a P&L. I could spend and sometimes I do. Sometimes when things are out of balance, I have to back up and say, okay, Dustin, we need to spend a little bit more than 10 minutes today because we're in trouble. Okay, or there's trouble on the horizon and I need to make some decisions. And in that case, I will spend a little bit more time. But for the most part, I simply want to get a very quick snapshot as to where I'm at and whether or not my business is healthy. And so here's what it is. Now, I'll talk about my P&L process next week. Today, I just want to talk about my balance sheet process. It's as simple as this. I have my bookkeeper print out every 3 months. And by the way, that's my reminder. She has it on her calendar. I don't have it on mine. She simply sends it over to me via email. And that's my reminder. Oh, gosh, it's been 3 months already? Okay, well, this weekend I'll set some time aside and I'll review these. Or if I've got a little time right then, like I said, I love a clean inbox, okay? So I'm either going to snooze it to the day that I know I'm going to have some time, or right then and there, or in that afternoon, within a couple hours, I might say, okay, you know what? I've got 10 minutes. I can set that aside and I can do this. I shut off all distractions and I pull up my balance sheet and I simply take some time to look through. This is no secret. There's no magic bullet here, folks. If you're looking for a formula, it's like, oh, geez, how does Dustin look at a balance sheet? Well, it's as simple as this, folks. I'm looking at the assets, and I just line by line. I don't get into the details. This is a very simple. By the way, my bookkeeper uses QuickBooks. Okay, so many of you are familiar with what that balance sheet looks like. It's very easy to print off, and she sends me the balance sheet and the P&L. I'll open up the balance sheet and I'll very quickly glance through and look at the asset side and make sure everything makes sense. And then I look at the liability side and I make sure that everything balances. Okay? And as long as it's balancing and as long as I feel like my assets are where I want them to be and that I understand where they are. Again, this is back to what we started with. If I want to buy a churro, I need to have $2 in my pocket. All I'm doing on a quarterly basis is making sure that I have $2 so that when a churro opportunity arises, that I can make the decision as to whether or not to buy the churro. Again, it doesn't mean that I should or should not. It's a matter of whether I could or could not. That's all a balance sheet is telling me. It tells me that if an opportunity arises, let's say I have an opportunity. In fact, I'll give you a true example right now. Today, as of this recording, I had an individual who has not been hired by my company. I'm putting her on a 2-week trial basis in my business. Okay, I don't know whether or not I'm going to hire her. She doesn't even know she's trying out for a job. Another story for another day. Okay, but today was her first day, and now I've got to decide after 2 weeks whether or not I should hire her. But I don't have to decide whether or not I could hire her. I already know the answer to that because of the time that I've spent in my balance sheet. That's it. That's as simple as it gets. A balance sheet is simply a snapshot in time as to the health of your business so that you can decide whether or not you can make certain decisions. And then as a business owner, you can decide whether or not you should. I want to share with you, as we close up today, a resource that I think it was huge for me, okay? I did not do well in accounting. It was actually one of my favorite classes in college, and it was mainly because the professor was amazing. He was an amazing teacher, and I loved coming to class, not because I loved the topic, but because I loved watching him teach. He was a master. Here's the problem, though. I hated the content, and I never really learned much. But I'll tell you something, if you want to take a very quick accounting class, okay? And when I say class, I mean a very simple book to read. I think it's 100 pages or less. In fact, that's I'm looking at the title right now. I always call it Accounting Made Simple by Mike Piper, Piper. If you go to Amazon, you'll find it's a little paperback book. But the full title is actually, this must have been in the recesses of my brains because I was not looking at this when I said this. Accounting Made Simple, Accounting Explained in 100 pages or less. Okay, so there you go. If you want a quick read on how to read a balance sheet and a P&L, which we'll talk about next week, I highly recommend this $14.24 book from Amazon. Okay, it's a great little book, great little read, very fast read. You can probably read it in an hour. And I go to it on a pretty regular basis, actually. I go back to this on a pretty regular basis just to remind me, what I am looking at. You don't need to be a CPA. Mike Piper is, but you simply need to know a little bit about accounting to make sure that you're running your business properly. If you would like help, folks, I mentioned earlier, and I do this on a regular basis, I love one-on-one coaching. And I will, and by the way, everything is completely and strictly confidential. I'm not going to open up your balance sheet and start laughing, I promise. But I will walk you and hold your hand through the process. Typically what that entails is you send me your profit loss, or you send me your balance sheet. You give me about 2 weeks to review them, and then we'll sit down for 1 or 2 hours and we'll go through and help you to tweak some things to be more profitable. It'll be my honor to do that. If you're interested in that, reach out to me. Look at my coaching tab on my website. Go to theappraisercoach.com, theappraisercoach.com.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit theappraisercoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.